That comes back to why pinball existed in the first place and why they wanted it to appeal to the gambling center of the brain. It's because initially it was a gambling device. They did.
Good morning, good evening, everybody. My name is Patrick Lee. I'm the host of the podcast Capital Central. Today in my studio, I have the chance to have Mike Loftus that has a very particular business and is very interesting because he sells small ticket item, but big ticket item that can go up to 20,000 sometimes. And I was very intrigued when I saw the business on Google Map because it's nothing like you have seen before. He has made appearance on CBC News. He has three locations. He's building the third location now, and he's a very interesting persona. So I hope you enjoy the podcast today.
Hi, I'm Mike Loftus. I'm the owner of Pineball Medics and the Ottawa Pinball Arcade and Montreal Pinball Arcade. And myself and my partner, Rob Lurie, are actually building a third location now, the Ottawa Montreal Pinball Museum in Alfred, Ontario, just outside of Hawkesbury, directly between the two great cities. And basically, that's it.
Thank you, Mike. Mike, first of all, thank you very much for joining me for the podcast today.
My pleasure.
And like I said in my intro, I was very intrigued by the business that you have, Pineball Medics. What made you start this business? But before that, I want to know, who is Mike?
Well, that's an interesting question. I've worn a few hats over the years. My original business was in restoration. I had a company that did water damage and mold remediation.
Okay.
In the Ottawa area. Ran that for decades. Eventually got out of it, retired about 10 years ago, and repurposed my company. Originally, it started out as an online pinball parts store. So there was no real
Source for online pinball parts. So we started Pinball Medics. It's been close to 10 years now, I guess, selling parts online. And we expanded into selling machines, repairing machines. We opened the Ottawa Pinball Arcade. Then Rob, my partner, bought the building in Alfred where we're building the museum, began building it, but at that time, COVID hit. And we sort of had to mothball, put the project on hold temporarily. And in the interim, he wound up opening the Montreal store. It's been at least 3 years now, I guess.
Yeah.
And that really took off. So again, the museum stayed on hold. We're just now kind of getting back to it. We're hoping to open up within about a month, actually.
Before all this, because I want to get to this is the most...
I jumped ahead a bit there.
But I want to know, and we can go way back till high school and stuff like that, because you got to the business of cleaning up...
restoration, yeah.
But why, and what kind of kids were you in high school and stuff like that?
When it started out, my uncle did the books for an amusement operator in New York City, Jaime Schwartz, and pinball machines were made illegal at that time in the 60s in New York. So to protect them, he had a property here in the townships, actually, where my uncle lived, where my mom grew up. A place called Lac Enchanté. It used to be a campground back at the time. Now I believe it's a private place, but it was a campground back then. Had a huge man-made lake, Lac Enchanté, and they had an arcade there. So the supplier, the owner of the campground that owned all the machines in New York City, shipped all the games to his bookkeeper, my uncle, here in Quebec.
Wow.
And so he stashed all these old pinball machines in this huge building, and of course he got to bring a few home. So since I was 3 years old in the late 60s, if I could stand in a milk carton and get over the top, I started playing pinball.
Wow, okay.
So that was where it started.
That's all love.
So a few years later, my grandparents, his parents, had a place in Florida where they'd go in the winter, a trailer park, and they had their trailer there. And of course they had an arcade, and they had a Captain Fantastic pinball machine there, which was sort of when I really, really got hardcore into pinball. I was all of 10 years old at that time, so I was ready to get serious. And so my love of pinball just kind of continued to there, playing pinball all over Ottawa as a kid, coming to Montreal to visit my uncle. He'd bring us downtown to St. Catharines, old Montreal. We'd be up and down St. Catharines, hitting all the awesome arcades, even bigger than the arcades in Ottawa. And that's how it kind of started. So then I started collecting in the early 90s when the arcades were all closing. You couldn't go anywhere to play pinball anymore, so I had to buy one to be able to still play. And it didn't take long after that until I started a side business on top of my restoration company, buying and selling pinball machines as a hobby business. And it just kind of stayed there in the background till I retired 10 years ago. And like I said, I started doing it full time, and my part-time hobby business turned into 80 hours a week, but that's just the way it goes.
But I think you have the entrepreneurial mindset.
Exactly. It was hard I couldn't really do it small time, so I flipped my corporation from being a restoration firm into being a pinball company, and then, it just carried on.
And why did you started the company in the restoration at first?
Money.
Money.
I mean, I'm not saying I didn't get any enjoyment out of helping people in their hour of need and rebuilding house and all that, but no, it was for the money. It was to pay the bills, pay for my house, put my kids through school, all the stuff that, we have to do in modern life, If I'd known that I could have done as much as I could have done with pinball earlier, I would have. Absolutely.
Do you think it would have worked that hard, that early?
Maybe not. It's hard to say.
I think there's something around the pinball machine that is like antique, and it brings back old memories and nostalgia.
Well, that's what it is. We're selling people a piece of their youth back. That's essentially what we're offering here.
Yeah.
I mean, you're a little younger than me, I can see. But when I was a boy, when I was a kid in the 70s, that's what it was. You went to the arcade and hung out with your buddies. That was what we did.
Yeah.
You went there, you had to bring your quarters, you had to play together, you ran out of quarters while you watched your friends play. You know what I mean? And that was what we all did. Every pizza shop. It was like weed stores and tattoo parlors are now. You couldn't go a block without hitting an arcade. They were everywhere.
So it was the thing to do back then.
Absolutely, it was a thing to do back then.
Have a slice of pizza, go play some arcade.
100%.
The best player plays the longest. Everybody wants to beat the score.
You play for bragging rights. You'd win a free game. It wasn't really worth anything. The machine still kept your quarter, but it felt like something.
Yeah.
They kept the gambling part of the mind stimulated to bring people back to keep playing.
And how do you guys kept of the score of the pinball machine? Because you see the highest score, but you don't know who did it.
Well, back then you did it, but you knew if it was yours.
Oh, you knew, right?
You knew, believe me. And you knew when it changed and someone else took it,
Okay.
But again, when I was young, and when I started playing pinball, it was electromechanical. We didn't even have digital readout on the scores. There was nothing. So, back then there'd be a piece of paper on the wall beside the machine where you put your name and
But how do you know if it's official? You need to have a referee there.
You just had to trust it. We didn't have fact checkers back then.
Wow.
You just had to be there.
That's crazy.
But it would always get beat, so you'd see the scores slowly increment.
Yeah. I played yesterday pinball machine.
Yeah.
And I was surprised because the scoring was like a flipboard.
Okay.
A mechanical flipboard.
An old electromechanical machine.
Yeah,
Yes.
and I don't know why the flippers, they were so small that the ball always goes in the middle. And the score was like 2,900, and I think the highest that I got was like 200. So I really don't know how the person, and it's official because it's mechanical,
Absolutely. Well, so that comes back to why pinball existed in the first place and why they wanted it to appeal to the gambling center of the brain. Because initially it was a gambling device. They didn't have flippers. It started out with a bingo machine, and those would have been all over Montreal. Trust me, there's probably more bingo machines in Montreal than anywhere else in Canada.
Okay.
Back in the day. So those machines were like a pinball machine, but they didn't have flippers. So you would just pull the ball, it would fall in a hole, and if it fell, the 5 balls fell in the right line of holes, it would create the numbers on a bingo card, and you would win.
Okay.
And they would pay out at the bar or whatever location you were in. They would pay you out your credits. They were illegal. So to get around those laws, they added flippers. So it's now a game of skill. There's some player interaction where you can change the outcome. It's not pure random chance.
Wow.
But we'll still give you a free game. We can't pay out the credits because, of course, that would be illegal. But you would be able to win a game, which still satisfies that part of your psychology that gets a reward from winning something, even
Wow.
if it's just a perceived win.
I never saw it that way. You know,
That's how
sometimes.
it was.
Yeah,
It was
well.
all about the money.
Oh wow. Okay.
Absolutely.
It was not pleasure, but it became after something of pleasurable thing. It was more for gambling
It was
addicts.
100% for gambling. And in fact, pinball was still illegal in Montreal until quite recently, by all accounts.
Yeah.
North Star, Machine Piast, Adam Kiesler, was instrumental in overturning the archaic laws that were, designed for a reason at the time that no longer applies. I mean, people aren't going into gambling parlors to play pinball. We've got, legal slots in bars run by the government, of course.
Yeah.
Coincidence. They're allowed now, but that's all good. The point is, pinball has been for amusement only for a number of years now.
Okay.
I'm not saying you can't bet on a game with your friend. You can bet on anything, and people do.
Of course.
But it's for amusement now.
Yeah.
And essentially, that's all it is.
But do you think you got hooked up to this when you were a kid because it was a part of the...
Well, it was just fun for me. I was 3 years old playing in my uncle's basement. I just wanted to beat the thing. That was it. I just wanted to keep the ball going.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I didn't even know what a free game was yet at that point. I guess an extra ball, maybe. I figured out what that was pretty early.
Do you have an idea, like, what happened to all those pinball machines?
Most of them wound up in landfill.
Are you serious?
Just like any other piece of modern consumer electronics, car, anything. People don't keep them. When they're old, they're just old. In 20 years, now they become collectible and nostalgic. But there's always that long period where they're
Worthless, yeah.
You got to pay. When I started collecting, people would pay me to pull games out of their basements.
Oh, yeah.
Believe it or not, oh yeah, absolutely.
And you were like, okay, I'll take it.
I would never say no. Getting them for free was normal. You'll take them out of my basement for free. Come and get them. That was standard in, let's say, the early 90s. And that's when the pinball collecting thing kind of took off. Pre-internet, there were trade shows in the States or collector hobbyist shows that I'd go to in the early 90s. Before it was big in Canada, it was already taking off in the US side.
Okay.
So,
and how many pinball machines did you have at a certain point unprofessionally?
unprofessionally?
Yeah.
Well, so that's the problem. When I started collecting, after I went to my first trade show and I realized I could sell them at a significant profit rather, it kind of tied into my other hobby, which is making money. So they kind of go together really well. So it's kind of a blurred line of when I took it from a hobby to a professional thing. It kind of just...
It was always in the back of the head.
It kind of always was. I mean...
But it's mixing pleasure with business at some, well, to a certain extent, if you want.
I did major in it. I mean, cutting class and hanging out at the arcade was my major. So, it's finally being applied now in business, which is great. But yeah, it's back to the point of the nostalgia. Yeah, it really was a time when they had no value. And now, and with the internet, and then during COVID, and people were all stuck at home and on the internet.
The scarcity of the product is...
Exactly. It just took it to a whole next level of collectability and ridiculous cost.
And you have a complete turnkey shop to fix them, to find parts, to sell them.
Yeah, well, I mean, we are, the biggest online pinball parts seller in Canada. We import from all the major suppliers, Comet Pinball, LEDs, they're the best LEDs in the business, ball bearing balls, Altec computers, there's a whole bunch there's a cottage industry that's kind of grown up around keeping these machines running, just like, classic cars.
Yeah.
You can still get a brand new fender for your 57 Chevy.
Yeah. It's getting
cool.
rarer, but yeah, but...
Need it.
Yeah. And so now you developed this. Where was the first center?
So the first center would have been in Ottawa.
Okay.
When I started the online store, it was in my basement of my house.
That's how it starts.
That's how it starts.
Paper, pen.
That's right. It was or computer maybe these days. And that was a side transition. My old business, the restoration business, I wasn't advertising online. I've been doing my own advertising forever, back from when Yellow Pages was like literally a black and, well, not white, but black and yellow process, designing my ads. And I didn't really focus on the online marketing because it was coming up. I mean, I used to spend $4,000 a month in Yellow Pages, but
wow.
It was okay because we brought in 40. So
yeah,
it was a very good investment. But slowly, there's actually months where I'm like losing money, and then there could be, and the yellow pages went from being this thick to, well, not existing at all.
Yellow Pages was a
That was
cash
where we
cow,
advertised. Yeah,
and
that was where you advertised. There was nowhere else. You didn't have to look around. Just put a big ass ad in the yellow pages, and you're good to go.
yeah, now it's a little bit more difficult now,
Completely
but
changed. So I kind of, fell off the marketing wagon a little bit with my old business, and it didn't help that I was really sick of it. I was just bored of it.
yeah,
It was a job. It was just a job I did for the money because I had to do it. And as much as there might have been some enjoyment in it, it was a lot of work.
yeah.
Waking
It's
up at 2
physical
in the morning
work.
to go suck sewage out of someone's basement. It's not fun.
Yeah, smells. Now every task become more irritating,
Absolutely.
and then you decide I sell it off. Let
That's
me go
it.
try something
It was
else.
just time for something else. So it was really time to retire, frankly. I had gotten divorced. I had my kids. They were still fairly young at the time. I couldn't be on the road 12 hours a day on job sites.
Yeah.
So I needed to start a business at home, which it was, like I say, for the first few years. But then we opened an arcade. There was a band that I used to play in at this bar. And I knew the owner over the years, and he knew that I had all the arcade games. And he said, the store next door just closed, the laundromat. I'm thinking of taking the wall out between my restaurant bar and putting a games room in there.
Why not?
That could be interesting. Yeah, why not? So we did, and then it just kept on expanding. Then, as I say, I met my partner Rob from Montreal, who has the Montreal store now. And he had just bought the building in Alfred that was wanting to build a pinball museum.
Oh, wow.
So he reached out to me because I was Pinball Medics, and we had a pretty complementary
Skill set,
and between our two businesses and as you say, skill sets, it was a pretty darn good match. So we started off doing that, and then, like I say, with the pandemic, the museum got mothballed. We opened Montreal as an interim just so we could get the work done there. And Montreal took off like crazy, very, very well received. So we haven't been able to focus on the museum because we're too busy in Montreal and Ottawa, the two big cities. It's kind of hard to go sit out in the middle of a rural area and hope that people come.
Yeah. I want to know, I'm fascinated by the business and the product, but
Yeah.
I saw, and like I said on the intro, we can go for a few hundred to a few 10,000.
Well, there's nothing for a few hundred in pinball
Yeah.
nowadays. Like a dirt cheap, blow it out the door on Kijiji or Facebook private sale. You'll be hard pressed to find anything under $1,500.
Yeah.
And if it's solid state, you're more like $2-3 grand is kind of a starting point for even a pretty
The
basic
base.
D-list, non-collectible. It's like cars, right? Like when people started collecting, my partner Rob, he's big into the classic cars as well. He told me, back in the day, nobody wanted a 4-door whatever. Everybody wanted the coupe with the shifter and the floor and the bucket seats. But those were all done a long time ago. So now all of a sudden the 4-door, well, that starts to become collectible.
Yeah.
It's all I can get
Yeah.
for, less than a
Scarcity of the product.
Scarcity product, exactly. They aren't making them anymore. So the supply just keeps on dwindling. And everybody starts focusing on it, and with the internet, if it's there, well, you've got a massive audience without even trying.
You thought about maybe making your own pinballs?
I've thought about it just long enough to realize that the only way to make a large fortune, or to make a small fortune making pinball machines, is to start with a large fortune, because it's virtually impossible. There are a few manufacturers, one notably that just went out of very, very recently went out of business, Haggis Pinball out of Australia, that were remaking some classic Bally machines from the 70s or 1980-ish, I guess.
It didn't work.
Went busted real quick.
Why?
I had briefly considered redoing a classic Bally game from scratch. And just sitting down and doing the numbers in my head loosely,
Doesn't work.
there's no way. You would have to sell them for $15,000
At this point, wow.
and make them in a significant quantity to sell essentially an antique, which is a great collectible nostalgic piece. but that doesn't offer a lot in the way of gameplay or, you know, any way to make your money back with it from a commercial.
And why is it so expensive to make?
Same reason everything is, I guess. I mean, when you sit down, you know, you can say a car is a crazy expensive thing, but when you add up all the individual components and then you have to assemble them and then you have to guarantee them, it's hard to make money.
Yeah.
Everything's really, really, really expensive.
That's true.
That's literally all there is to it. And it's incredibly complex, time consuming. You've got a million different computer systems, mechanical systems,
The
control
buttons,
systems,
colors.
everything. You've got artwork, you've got cosmetic stuff, you've got stuff that has to handle, you know, the abuse of a 5-pound little tiny steel ball smashing into it a million miles an hour. I am exaggerating those figures, but
Yeah.
it's not an easy thing to build. It's like, why don't you just build your own car?
Yeah.
Well, why doesn't Canada build a car? It's an entire country.
Yeah.
Because it's
complex.
incredibly complicated and expensive and really easy to go wrong.
You will need a big factory to do that,
You would
and
need a
then
factory, exactly. You've got to produce it en masse for it to make sense.
yeah, I
And
understand.
how does a new guy just getting in produce something en masse?
Doesn't work.
You can't. You need to sell it first.
I understand.
So what happens with most of these companies, these startups or boutique manufacturers, essentially, is they start up and there's horror stories all over the internet. The guys paying their deposits, paying for games before they've even finished being developed, and then, oh surprise, they went out of business and you're never going to get your product or a refund. But people are still doing it. People are still putting deposits on pie in the sky manufacturing dreams. I shouldn't speak badly of people. That's terrible.
No, but no,
Good
it's-
for them for trying,
But yeah, it's
but I wouldn't.
too complex.
Way. I mean, you're pretty well guaranteed to lose money.
Oh, wow.
So it's got to be a labor of love. I mean, like our arcades. If Rob and I didn't love pinball and we weren't willing to sit there and put our time into keeping these things running and rebuilding them and souping them up and hot rodding them so they can survive commercial use, they wouldn't exist.
Yeah, I understand. But at the same time, now you're in a good position where you have a SCAR product and you are the reference for an entire country.
Well, in a sense, I mean, not the, you know, I'll say I'm the reference for the entire of the people sitting in this chair right now. But, but yes, we strive hard to provide something that didn't exist. You know what I mean? Like I didn't base my company on, oh, these guys are doing that. I think what we're doing is
Freestyle.
It came right out of here. It's 100% freestyle. We make it up as we go. We change it as we go. We have a good idea. We do it. It's not working. We stop doing it.
And what's the most common problem with the old pinball machine?
Well, actually, with the old ones, there isn't really a big problem. The great thing is we can get parts for them. And our experience with them, you know, being pretty unique, that I have an arcade in Ottawa with like 20 plus 40, 50-year-old games that are on all day, every day. They get the daylights played out of them regularly. So we get to see what does commonly fail in a machine in actual heavy commercial use when it is 40 years old. And like any other piece of consumer electronics, it's like an old refrigerator. Your 1950s fridge is probably still running.
Yeah.
And if it breaks, you can take it out, you can unsolder the bad part, you can solder a new one in, and you're good to go.
You're good to
They
go.
were made to be repaired.
Yeah, not like technologies these days. It's made to be thrown.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got a printed circuit board, you need an electron microscope to see the traces on it. It's not designed to be serviced. Exactly, you replace the parts.
Yeah.
So
You think it's a lifeless item? Like you will always be able to repair it?
oh, the old stuff, yes, absolutely. As long as we can get transistors and diodes and solder and wire, yes.
Okay.
So it will always be.
The value will just increase with time.
It will. I mean, and that is, you know, to a good point. My real concern with the modern games is that this stuff is not serviceable, and they're not producing them in the quantity they used to back in the day, that there's going to necessarily be enough of an aftermarket, let's say in 10, 20 years, that anyone's going to want to make replacement components to keep these games running when they have failed and the manufacturer's no longer supporting the product.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, whether they go out of business or whether they just move on to 3 different, I mean, try getting your 10-year-old iPhone fixed. Apple's not taking
Yeah, it's...
It's the way it goes. They got, 7 years that they have to provide
the
parts to
guarantee,
maintain their
and then it's
commercial equipment, that's it.
then you think it's gonna end at some point.
Well, I think it might. Now, I mean, with artificial intelligence, well, hopefully we'll be able to create hardware and software by just asking it, and it'll be able to do that for us
Yeah.
before it takes over and kills us. So, you know, there'll be that brief
brief
Great
moment.
period where everything will fix itself.
And do you think that a lot of people will take interest into that because a lot of people are getting out of work now, the workforce?
Absolutely.
But lived in your place of time where pinball was something. Do you think there will be a regain of popularity into this?
Well, there is, and there has been for quite a while now. It's been, I mean, the proliferation of barcades, let's say, to use an actual licensed term, but arcade bars across the U.S., they're everywhere. They're very popular.
Okay.
We have a few here in Montreal already. We have a couple in Ottawa, including ourselves, and House of Tard. We have, Toronto's got several. They come and go. I'm not quite as up on all the locales there because I'm not there as often and don't work there. But it's a growing niche that just continues to sort of expand.
Okay.
And I think we're pretty safe from, like you say, work from home, artificial intelligence taking over a lot of jobs. It's going to be a little while before AI can create an arcade experience.
Yeah.
It involves not going to an actual
yeah.
At least without getting a Neuralink chip. Maybe then we can simulate it. But until then, I think I'm safe.
Yeah.
So I give it at least 5 years.
And who is your client? Because the price point of certain pinball machine is literally a new car.
Absolutely.
And who can afford to buy these high price ticket items? And especially it's just for fun, it's just to sit there.
Absolutely. Well, I'll give you an idea. I'll give you a couple of analogies to make it easier. Like I always ask myself, living in Ottawa, I live in a sub-community called Manitic, just south of the city, but now the city is on us. And where do these people buy all these $1 million houses?
Yeah.
They're slapping them up like cookie cutters. As far as you can see, farmers' fields and forests mowed down, $1 million homes everywhere glued together, and someone's buying them.
Yeah.
So I guess it's those people, obviously it is an expensive hobby for sure. It's a luxury item, but I guess the good side of it is they don't lose their value like a lot of items. Because it is a very good question. I've had people literally ask me, who would spend $15,000 on a toy?
Yeah.
Well, someone to whom $15,000 doesn't mean a whole lot.
Yeah.
Of which there are a lot of people.
Yeah, there is.
I'm not saying I'm one of them, but there's a lot of them out there. And it would be the same as, say, buying a hot tub. What does a hot tub cost?
Yeah, hot tub is
$15,000.
Yeah.
And what's it worth in 5 years?
Nah, not much.
You're going to pay someone to take it away.
Yeah, it's
Your
true.
pinball machine, it might even be worth more than you paid for it if you were smart about it. But it's not going to be worth exponentially less. It's still going to have a very significant value. Now, if you buy from me as a retailer, you're paying a significant premium. I'm charging twice as much as you'll pay for it in a private sale, but I warranty it. I actually do rebuild it, not just cosmetically. We do the hard stuff, the electronics, the mechanical. We get things working.
You can have a game that plays.
Absolutely. Will it look brand new? Will I chrome plate the legs that weren't in the first place? No. We sell games for people to play. We're like hot rodders.
I understand.
As opposed to a restorer that wants something to look at only. But ultimately, there's a lot of people that don't mind spending 10, 20 grand to have a piece of their childhood back.
But when you deliver, do you do online deliveries?
For pinball machines?
Yeah.
Well,
how does that work?
Most of our sales are local. Because the reason you're going to buy a game from us as opposed to privately is because we set it up, we warranty it, we can give you an expectation of reliability. Sorry, I just lost track of what I was saying there.
I was saying, do you ship let's say?
Ship, yes, sorry. So normally we would deliver within our local area where we can bring it to your house, we can set it up. Because to a person that's never had a pinball machine, even just putting it on legs and setting up the head and plugging in the connectors can be pretty daunting. So most owners that will buy from us, it's because they don't want to have to deal with the maintenance of it. They just want a machine that's going to come to their house, it's going to work. If it breaks, they're going to make a phone call, a guy's going to come and fix it. That's it. So we don't sell as much online for shipping. Our parts all the time, of course. But we do, and when we do, it's generally we bring it to Day and Ross, we strap it to a pallet, it gets delivered to them, and then they're on their own. So the warranty doesn't have the same advantage to somebody, say, in BC. yes, we'll still pick up the phone and we'll give you tech support by phone to the best of our ability. We'll send you a part if you need it.
Yeah, but you cannot do the maintenance
I'm
work.
not going to be showing up at your house with my toolbox.
Well, unless they pay the price for that.
There might be a price, but it's not listed on our website. Let's just say call to discuss.
Yeah, call to discuss.
Requires head service.
Yeah, I understand. But it could be a market too. But I mean, there's very little of these companies here. Maybe you have explored the part where you can sell to the US, because the US has 10 times the population that we have here. Maybe, it would be an option to look. And also it exposes you to more pieces that has been undiscovered.
Well, the parts we can get because they're reproduced original parts, and they do come from the US generally. Some parts, or some of the parts might come from China, like LEDs or chips or things that are only manufactured there. But generally it all comes out of the States, and a lot of it out of Chicago even specifically.
Oh yeah, so it's not too far.
All the pinball machines still to this day come from.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, just as it turns out, Chicago, Illinois is the pinball capital of the world.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is? Because they have the manufacturer there?
Well, yeah, exactly. So when pinball started, they were being made by slot machine manufacturers, Williams, Bally, etc. Bally's Casino in Las Vegas, same people. So they were based in Chicago, and the games all came out of there. All the competitors were right from there. And still to this day, Stern Pinball, the last of the big guys anyways, of the large commercial manufacturers. There are a couple of other boutique manufacturers that have gotten a little bigger, like Jersey Jack Pinball, Spooky Pinball. There's a couple of them, but the main bulk of the commercial pinball machines being produced are from Stern Pinball.
Okay.
As I say, still in Chicago.
Okay. And you think that... go ahead, sorry.
Well, ultimately, I don't sell back into there because it all comes from there.
Yeah.
And they have 100 times more games there, used games, than we do, because they all came from there. So besides their huge population, they actually started there in the first place.
Yeah.
So while Canada was a huge export market for them, for sure, and Canada would have been one of the countries in the world that was the most affected by pinball culture at the time, and still to this date, other than that, a lot of games would have gone to, say, France and Italy and Europe. There was one Italian manufacturer even. But ultimately, there isn't really a need for me to market in the States, and it's not a volume business here. So it's not like I can just call Walmart and say, give me, another dozen Bobby Orr 1978 Bally pinball machines.
Yeah, you're not...
I have to find an old pinball machine. We have to put 40, 50, 60 hours, $1,500, $2,000 into restoring it. And then we have to put it in the arcade, burn it in, and test it before it's ready to be sold, if we want to sell it. And so it's not a volume business.
Yeah, okay, so I understand exactly what you mean. So you provide a quality good that takes more time, but the margin is higher.
That's right. Because it's really just Rob and I at the same time. We don't have employees. Like, there aren't people that work on this stuff. That's ultimately the problem. If you want to get really good at fixing old pinball machines, well, you're going to need to work in an arcade full of old pinball machines, and it ain't 1979 anymore, so that job doesn't really exist anymore.
You would have to create it. Find somebody else that has the enthusiasm that you have.
Absolutely, but then you got to do it. You got to put in the time.
Yeah.
It takes years to get used to this stuff. I mean, just to figure out what's going to fail commonly on a 1980 pinball machine.
Yeah.
Well, you're going to have to put it in an arcade for at least a year, and it get played every day, constantly. And lots of them. So you'll see, well, this happened 10 times, this happened once, this happened never. So you'll get an idea eventually of what's involved. But like any trade, it takes, they say 10,000 hours to master.
Of course, yeah. 20 hours to know a little bit, but then...
Exactly, to truly master it. 10,000 hours.
Yeah.
So where are you going to pick up 10,000 hours of work working on 70s pinball machines?
Yeah, it's not there.
There's pinball medics, but we're not hiring because we do it ourselves.
Yeah, I understand.
Because I wouldn't make money if I had to pay someone to train them how to do it for them to be able to.
And it would take a long period of time. Oh yeah.
Oh, we tried many times.
Yes, but it takes a long time, and the interest of the person.
They're gone by then. How much are you going to pay a guy to train him how to do a job?
Yeah.
I can't pay $50 an hour.
It has to come like a lone warrior out of random, and
exactly.
He's like, hey, I saw what you did. I've been doing it, so I think about doing commercially myself. So
exactly.
Like how you met your business partner, you already had the
just gonna say,
curriculum.
Rob's my partner, not my employee.
Yeah.
Because guys that are that good, they don't work for people. They work for themselves.
I understand. So you would have to find more.
It would be virtually impossible.
Yeah.
Even Rob has a very hard time trying to train. You couldn't train someone to do what Rob does. He's got a background also of a licensed commercial electrician, and he ran a performance automotive shop for 20 years in Montreal as well. So he's got the mechanical, he's got the electrical, he's got the electronics, and specialized in 12-volt wiring of automotive.
Wow.
So that's a pretty unique skill set that all lends to pinball, just by pure coincidence. Then he got into pinball about, I guess, 2 years before I met him. And he's one of those guys that when he gets into something, he gets into it hardcore. So he would have been there, get off work, he would have got home and probably done 10 hours of frigging around with computers,
just
circuits,
to
pinball
understand
machines, going on YouTube and researching schematics, and oh my God, he's out of control OCD for that. But if you aren't that, well, good luck. You're not going to compete with him.
Yeah, it's not gonna work.
Yeah.
Any.
You have to be that obsessed and have that natural ability and put in the time.
For you, long term, do you want just to, I don't want to say survive, but you want to live from your passion, but not necessarily scale the business?
I always want to grow. I mean, I can't help it. I always say, okay, I'm happy. We're just going to stop at this.
But can you can you do like vertical integration to your business, or like horizontal, like purchasing a competitor or just buying a manufacturer part?
No, there's no competitors because no one does what we do. We're a very unique
Niche
thing. Like we're a creation of our imagination and random life. So it doesn't exist anywhere else. So I mean, you know, what would be to buy a name? Well, there is no real name that would add to what we have.
Yeah.
I'll buy machines. I buy people's inventory out, no problem.
Yeah.
But that's about it. There's not really anything else I would be able to benefit from, I don't think.
And can you add a suite of products, let's say, to complementary the pinball machine?
Absolutely. So I mean, I'll let something out secretly here. I haven't released it yet.
Released.
We have designed and been beta testing for a little over a year now, a set of digital displays for classic Bally and Stern pinball machines for the 70s and the 80s. They were the most produced games ever made. Like, I mean, Bally at the time in the late 70s during the golden era when pinball was at its peak, they outproduced all the other manufacturers combined 3-1. So they would make like 20,000 of each, you know, well, not of each, but like that would be their best one. I said the Bally 8-ball, they made like 20,000 of them. But they would have had production runs typically between 15 and 20,000 for that 3-4 year period when pinball was at its absolute zenith. And so there are more of those used games still out there than any other. And it's our personal favorite, as it turns out. So we recondition a lot of old Bally's and Sterns.
Okay.
And we were buying aftermarket displays for them. Some of them we were happier with than others. So I have another buddy, retired computer engineer, software, hardware genius guy, Rob Curtin, that designed a display with all the best features of the displays I had used in the past and a few improvements of his own, being a genius in that sort of area.
Yeah.
And we've been testing them out in our own games at the arcades for a little over a year, and we just did a massive order of digits, and we're about to start assembly on a really nice set of assembled in Canada, and what I believe to be the best classic Bally Stern pinball displays ever made.
Because you made it?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't have made them unless I thought they were the best. I would just keep using the other ones.
But you guys seems like very difficult on yourself to produce good quality,
Absolutely.
good. And I don't think you'd be successful in this area if it was not the case of your diligence. So I would trust that you put all the love that you can into the...
Absolutely. It's all about durability, and you know, aesthetics are important too. I think they look really nice. We're doing them in a few colors. They come in white, red, blue, green, native, LED. Plus, you can put a color filter, whatever color you want, if you want to get even more creative. But it's all about the durability. I don't want to be going back to a customer's house and fixing their game. I don't want to be having to mail someone another part back because the first one broke.
Yeah.
I don't want to be having to go online and protect my name and make excuses for why my products failed.
Yeah. You just want to do a good,
Just do it better.
good
Someone
quality
complains,
product.
perfect. There's an opportunity for improvement.
There you go. Okay, so your game is definitely not volume. A lot of
No.
business survive on volume
Absolutely.
with very low margin.
Well,
But
the parts it is, like you want to buy pinball LEDs, no problem. I got tons of those. Pinball LEDs, they're the best in the business. I run out, I order more, they're here in a couple of days. So that's fine for our new parts. But for actual pinball machines, no. A classic pinball machine is a completely different animal.
yeah, it has a light bulb sometimes.
Absolutely. Well, that would be the biggest selling thing in pinball is little pinball LEDs.
Yeah.
They all came with incandescent bulbs up until only a few years ago, in fact, that they switched over to using LEDs in the new machines.
Wow.
But speaking of that, we are actually selling new games now through Mana Lounge Pinball out of London, Ontario. It's a great new Stern dealer here in Canada, which used to be locked up under exclusive arrangement with Player One Amusements, who were owned by Cineplex up until recently. But they've since opened up the gates, I guess, and there are a few new Stern dealers in town. I know Nitro Pinball from out west has been expanding. They're in Quebec City now. I understand they're coming to Montreal and further east. We've got Mana Lounge, who we're reselling for out of London, Ontario. We have games in our Ottawa store as demo models that people can come and try out before they buy it. And we can get any machine we want, and as Pinball Medics, we offer an additional extended warranty, delivery, and setup for, as I had discussed earlier, a lot of people.
Yeah.
The problem isn't the $15,000. The problem is, how am I going to get it into my house and get it working and make sure it stays working? That's what they're worried about.
Yeah.
Because that's what a new game is, 10 to 15 grand. I mean,
That's crazy, yeah. And I see sometimes bars, they have like 10 or 12 of them, so I never really realized the implication of the not sunk cost, it's an investment, but then you're gonna have people drinking beer next to the game and so on and so forth. They have chicken wing finger, they play, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And then when you get it to the repair shop, you see all the grease and see what I mean? I never considered.
At our arcade, we're really careful because we have arguably the best chicken wings in town. The neighborhood pub. That's our hospitality partner next door we're joined to. And we don't have food on the arcade side.
Yeah.
And we do allow drinks, but we have a cup holder in every game. And yeah, I get that's one of my pet peeves is when I have to go out and tell me, excuse me.
Yeah, I understand.
$1,000 game, do you think you can put your $2 beer in the
Yeah. Yeah, but people, you know what it is. They want to have a good time. They drink a little beer.
You don't always think of it. I mean, I don't take it personally. It's just a pet peeve. But I try to have as many signs as possible, and
very understandable too.
That's it.
And you put a lot of hours to fix them, but most of the time people I didn't know about all this before I met you today.
Absolutely.
It's a completely different world where I come from. It's a very, I don't want to say lonely world, but not a world where there's a lot of people that have the passion to do it.
Right.
So they don't understand necessarily the implication to maintain this pinball machine.
Absolutely. And we put a lot of love into it too, as you said. It's a passion. So
Yeah.
I take my machines very personally.
You think you said you have kids? Do you think they want to take back the business at some point, or it's just something
Hell
that
no.
they're like?
My kids grew up with a rock band studio and a pinball arcade in their basement. You'd think they'd appreciate some of it.
Yeah.
Not even a little bit.
Wow.
Sadly. I would have killed to have that in my basement growing up. But what can you do?
Not the same interests.
Unfortunately not. You never know. Maybe one of them will turn on to it at some point, because that is a question. What am I going to do with all of this stuff at some point? We got
Sell
a lot of
it.
games. We got a lot of stuff.
Sell it, man.
Well, we're going to have to at some point. And we have been lately, actually. We did kind of decide, you know what, we got to stop hoarding. We're not getting any younger. And we like to rebuild stuff to ridiculous levels of being souped up and hot rodded. But it takes time. It's like 50, 60 hours per game. We've got hundreds of games, and they keep coming. So realistically, I'm never going to do them all. So we've actually sort of bent our rule and started just fixing them so they work and selling them like that.
Okay.
Without a guarantee, perfectly clear. No, this is not one of our rebuilt, customized, guaranteed games.
It's not the hot rod.
It's not. But if it does break, you can always bring it back and we can always fix it for you. So you're never going to be stuck.
I understand.
But
okay, I understand. So I was gonna ask you a little bit, for the future of the pinball. What do you think it's gonna look like, and for you and all this, where are you gonna stand?
Well, I mean, I'm still going to be into it. I've been into it since I was able to see over the glass on a milk carton. But the new generation, hard to say. We have a lot of young people at our arcade, believe it or not. I have some regulars at our tournaments every Wednesday night. Like, they started playing there when they were 8 years old. And then I have a whole bunch of 50-something kids just like me.
Yeah.
You know, all ages. So there is still an appeal to the youth. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've had a kid come in and tell me, you know, like they'll play my game Haunted House, for example, which is a really cool collectible classic from 1980. And it's been used in a lot of the virtual pinball games, you know, on video, you know, TV video games and stuff, consoles. And I'll have kids going, oh my God, I played this on my PlayStation, but I didn't know this was actually a real thing. It's like, yeah, pinball is actually real. They just take to it just like I do, instantly.
Wow.
Of course, some they'll be sitting in the arcade, rather on the bar side with their cell phone.
But yeah, some.
But not most.
Yeah.
So where will it be? I don't know. Hard to say.
Do you have? You seem to have a very good life in terms of fulfilling what you like to do, except the part where you did the cleaning for the restaurant, but you always kept this passion about the pinball.
Absolutely.
Do you have any recommendation or advice for younger people that would like to start in business or just live from a passion?
Well, it's hard to say because, like you asked, what would this business have been if I had just gone into this full time? You know, when I was in my early 20s, let's say.
Yeah.
I think I would have, you know, been living in my parents' basement a lot longer than I did. For starters, I don't think I'd be a homeowner necessarily, or at least I wouldn't have been as early. But I made good money in my restoration business, so I still liked it. You know what I mean? We had some great years, you know. The global warming's been going on for a while. We had some really good floods back in the day.
Yeah.
I kind of feel bad now. I see the way things are going. It's like, I think I sold a little too soon. But then again, I'd be working so hard, I'd probably be really sick of it.
You did a perfect mix of both, I feel.
Well, I think so, you know. So, I mean, I'd say, yeah, go with your heart. But, you know, you got to make money too. So you do have to sell out at some point, right?
Yeah.
You have to go with what people want.
So you would maybe recommend do something that makes money, but don't lose the passion on the hobby.
Well, that's it. I mean, like I say, one of my hobbies has been business. So it really doesn't matter what I'm doing.
Yeah, and
I'm enjoying myself.
That's what I'm
degree.
thinking. Yeah.
You know, so I'm not putting down the construction business. I mean, I'd say, in fact, you know, construction and trades are probably one of the safer businesses right now.
Yeah, there's a lot of jobs.
You can't do that one from home.
Yeah.
And you can't ask ChatGPT to do it for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's, you know, I think trades are going to be really important.
I think it's getting back big time, actually.
Absolutely. Well, so many people are scared away from, you need to get an education. You got to go into computers. It's the future. But if everyone's doing computers,
nobody's going to do the plumbing. Yeah. I'm pretty sure like one of the speaker at some point for whatever successful entrepreneur is going to be like, hey, I got a tip for you, and this tip is to become like a plumber because you get paid $180,000 per hour, because there will be, let's say, 1,000 programmer for one plumber.
That's
so
right.
Then there will be a scarcity in the trade jobs. So I'm thinking, if I had to start my life now, knowing what I know and where the market goes, I would probably go to trade school.
Electrical, plumbing.
Start a business and that. You're never going to run out of business. These days, you're never going to run out of business.
You won't. I mean, there's a lineup. Try getting a guy to come fix your house when you have a problem right now.
Service call is going to cost you this just to move.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, that's pretty much that. And do you have, let's say, a final word for the audience that can be either kids, professional that are considering maybe jumping the fence and going to entrepreneurial or living from their hobby? It could be colleagues in the pinball area. Do you have something to tell them?
Well, I mean, far be it for me to tell someone what to do with their financial future. You know, I'm not putting any guarantees on anything. Myself personally, I've just always gone with my gut. That's the easiest way I can put it. If it feels right, I do it. And you go into it all the way. Whatever you're going to do, commit to it, do it 100%. And if it doesn't work out, don't be afraid to cut loose and move on.
Yeah.
Try something else.
Okay.
It's like painting a room. You don't like the color? Well, can paint it a different color again.
That's true.
And that's what I would say. Try it passionately, try it with all the effort you can muster. And if it doesn't work, it ain't meant to be.
Then it ain't meant to be. You try something else. And when do you would say to cut the cord when it's not working?
Probably when your bank manager calls and tells you that he got a call from CRA and they froze your account.
No, it's time to...
I'm a bad guy to ask. I never know when to quit. I'm going to keep going. My foot's on the floor and I don't let it go.
Okay. Then maybe that's why you've been doing it for quite some time.
Well, I've hit a few bumps. I've jumped a few curbs, but I'm still going.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And again, with the current, technological, financial, political climate, like, I don't know what to tell you, man. The world's gone nuts.
Yeah, we don't know. Nobody knows.
Try to have fun.
Yeah.
In the middle of it.
Enjoy the process.
Pinball, you know what I mean? It's safer that way.
Good.
You know?
I would like to thank you, Mike, for coming to the podcast today.
My pleasure.
Of course, it was a cold call. I don't know you, and who's this weird guy that called me today?
Absolutely.
But I'm very fascinated by your persona and the perseverance that it takes, and also to recognize that sometimes you can't always do what you want, but you have some means of survival.
Yeah.
And you did that quite well, and then you revisited that idea of passion later on to when you're more stable, I'd like to say that.
Absolutely.
Then to give it a real shot, to try it.
But the passion for business is key.
Yeah.
If you're passionate about business, and you have to be, because everyone's going to try to hold you down.
Yeah.
And everything's going to push against you, from the system to your competitors to even people that you might have thought were your friends. You get a lot of pushback to it. You have to really want it. Yeah,
I was talking to a guy, an entrepreneur as well in I don't want to say the industry, but let's say that it's an industry that is very in advance in his time.
Okay.
And he's very successful at it, and it's been 6 years now. And I had this discussion with him, and he's like, when you start something, nobody's going to understand. And you're very lonely for yourself and your persona, and your wife is not going to understand, and your kids are not going to understand. Why are you dropping this miracle business that does you, let's say, 200 grand per year? And now you know everybody, they just call you, you're the reference, nobody's going to understand that.
No.
But it's like, when you're going to surpass that step, and things are going to go, and your cell phone rings because you become a reference into this, then everything makes sense. But then again, the reaction of the people is that, oh, we always knew you were going to do it. And when it fails, people were like, oh, but we all told you that it was not going to work.
Absolutely. It's
so
easy to be a spectator, right?
Maybe we're just like, how do you call this, masochists, like the people that like the pain.
There's a certain amount of masochism required, absolutely.
Yeah, maybe we're just people like that.
Yeah, you have to be willing to beat your head against the wall.
Yeah.
Quite a while before you get through.
Mike, it was a pleasure.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much to be in my studio today. Hi, everybody. Thank you for listening to the podcast. I would also mention thank you for the increasing in views. For the last podcast, we had around 300 views, which is not a lot. But what is interesting is that we have 88 hours of listening time, which means that 33% of you guys, almost 30%, listened the entire episode because it was 1 hour. So thank you for the love. Thank you for the comment. I hope you enjoyed the podcast with Mike today as much as I did. He's a very special individual that was able to mix pleasure with business in his life. And he revisited his childhood passion to live from it now. He retired from the main business, but he's such an entrepreneur that he couldn't sit at home and just retire. He decided to do a business with the pinball machine. Now he has 2 locations in 2 different provinces, and now he's building a 3rd one. So I would like to thank you, and I hope you liked the episode. Thank you. Have a good day. Thanks, bro.
Right on, man. Very cool.
Filter that down. Change the pattern a bit. I think we need a ride cymbal.